Welcome back to Footnotes and Folly. I am Pemberton and this is part 4. We have watched Cyrus the Persian topple the richest king on earth, but Herodotus, bless him, has been getting ahead of himself, and now doubles back to tell us where this Cyrus came from. In this part, how the Medes threw off Assyria and a clever judge named Deioces talked his way into a throne and a palace of 7 coloured walls, and then the great folk tale at the heart of Book 1, the baby marched for death, the herdsman who could not do it, and the terrible dinner that paid the king back. Let us continue.
Among the Medes there appeared a man of great ability named Deioces, son of Phraates. Deioces formed a desire for despotic power and acted in this way. The Medes lived in separate villages, and Deioces, who even before this time had a great reputation in his own village, began to practice justice much more than before and with greater zeal. He did this, although there was much lawlessness throughout the whole of Media, and although he knew that injustice is always at war with justice. The Medes of his own village, seeing his character, chose him as their judge. Since he was aiming at power, he was upright and just, and by acting in this way he gained no small praise from his fellow citizens. When people of the other villages learned that Deioces was a man who gave decisions more rightly than anyone else, and when before this they had often suffered from unjust judgments, they too gladly came to Deioces to have their cases decided. At last they entrusted their business to no one else. As more and more people continually came to him, because they learned that his decisions proved to be according to the truth, Deioces saw that everything was being referred to him. Then he would no longer sit in the place where he had formerly sat in public to decide cases. He said that he would decide cases no more, because it was not profitable for him to neglect his own affairs and spend the whole day deciding causes for his neighbors. Robbery and lawlessness then prevailed in the villages, even more than before. The Medes assembled in one place, considered their condition together, and spoke about the state in which they were. I suppose the friends of Deioces spoke very much to this effect. Since they were not able to live in the land under the present order of things, they should set up a king from among themselves. Then the land would be well governed, and they themselves would turn to their labor, and not be ruined by lawlessness. By words such as these they persuaded themselves to have a king. When they immediately raised the question of whom they should set up as king, Deioces was put forward and praised by everyone, until at last they agreed that he should be their king. He ordered them to build him a palace worthy of royal dignity, and to strengthen him with a guard of spearmen. The Medes did so. They built him a large and strong palace in that part of the land which he indicated to them, and they allowed him to select spearmen from all the Medes. When Deioces had obtained rule over them, he compelled the Medes to make one fortified city, and to give their chief attention to it, paying less regard to the other cities. Since the Medes obeyed him in this too, he built great and strong walls, those now called Ecbatana, standing in circles one inside another. This wall is contrived so that each circle is higher than the next by the height of the battlements alone. To some extent, I suppose, the nature of the ground helps this, since it is on a hill, but it was produced much more by art, for the circles are 7 in all. Within the last circle are the royal palace and the treasure houses. The largest of these walls is about equal in size to the circuit of the wall around Athens. The battlements of the first circle are white, of the second black, of the third crimson, of the fourth blue, and of the fifth red. Thus the battlements of all the circles are colored with various tints, and of the last 2, one has its battlements overlaid with silver and the other with gold. These walls Deioces built for himself and around his own palace, and he commanded the people to dwell around the wall. After everything had been built, Deioces established the rule which he was the first to establish. He ordained that no one should enter into the king's presence, but that all should deal with him always through messengers, that the king should be seen by no one, and furthermore, that laughing or spitting in his presence should be considered unseemly, for everyone without exception. He surrounded himself with the state so that his fellows, who had been brought up with him, and were of no lower family and no less manly virtue, might not be grieved by seeing him and so plot against him, but that, being unseen by them, he might be thought to be of a different nature. After setting these things in order and strengthening himself in his despotism, he was strict in preserving justice. The people used to write down their cases and send them into his presence. He decided the questions brought into him and sent them out again. This was his practice in judging cases. He also made this arrangement: if he heard that anyone was behaving lawlessly, he sent for him and punished him according to what each wrongful act deserved. He had watchers and listeners throughout all the land over which he ruled. Deioces united the Median race alone and ruled over it. The tribes of the Medes are these: Busi, Paradicenians, Strachates, Arizantians, Butians, and Magians. So many are the tribes of the Medes. The son of Deioces was Phraates. When Deioces died, after being king for 53 years, Phraates received the power in succession. Having received it, he was not satisfied to rule the Medes alone, but marched against the Persians. He attacked them first before any others, and made them the first people subject to the Medes. After this, ruling these 2 nations, both of them strong, he proceeded to subdue Asia, going from one nation to another, until at last he marched against the Assyrians, by which I mean those Assyrians who lived at Nineveh. They had formerly been rulers of the whole, but at that time they were left without support because their allies had revolted from them, though at home they were prosperous enough. Phraates marched against these Assyrians, and both he himself was killed, after reigning 22 years, and the greater part of his army was destroyed. When Phraates had brought his life to an end, XIII, son of Phraates, son of Deioces, received the power. This king is said to have been much more warlike than his forefathers. He was the first to divide the men of Asia into separate divisions. That is, he was the first to arrange spearmen, archers, and horsemen apart from one another, whereas before that time all were mixed together without distinction. This was the king who fought with the Lydians when the day became night during the battle, and who also united under his rule the whole of Asia above the river Halys. After gathering all his subjects together, he marched against Nineveh to avenge his father, and also because he desired to conquer that city. He fought a battle with the Assyrians and defeated them, but while he was sitting down before Nineveh, a great army of Scythians came upon him. Their leader was Madias, son of Protohias, king of the Scythians. These Scythians had invaded Asia after driving the Cimmerians out of Europe, and in pursuit of them as they fled they had come to the land of Media. From the Maeotian lake to the river Phasis, and the land of the Colchians is a journey of 30 days for one traveling without baggage. From Colchis it is not far to cross over into Media, for there is only one nation between them, the Hesperians, and after passing by this nation one is in Media. However, the Scythians did not make their invasion by this way, but turned aside to take the upper road, which is much longer, keeping Mount Caucasus on their right hand. Then the Medes fought with the Scythians, and having been worsted in the battle, they lost their power, and the Scythians obtained rule over all Asia. From there they went on to invade Egypt. When they were in Syria, which is called Palestine, Psammetichos, king of Egypt, met them, and by gifts and entreaties turned them from their purpose, so that they should not advance any farther. As they retreated, when they came to the city of Ascalon in Syria, most of the Scythians passed through without doing any damage, but a few of them who had stayed behind plundered the temple of Aphrodite Urania. This temple, as I find by inquiry, is the most ancient of all the temples belonging to this goddess. The temple in Cyprus was founded from it, as the people of Cyprus themselves report, and the Phoenicians founded the temple in Kythera, coming from this land of Syria. These Scythians who plundered the temple at Ascalon, and their descendants forever, were struck by the divinity with a disease that made them women instead of men. The Scythians say that this is why they were diseased, and that this is why travelers who visit Scythia now see among them the condition of those whom the Scythians call Anaries. For 28 years the Scythians were rulers of Asia, and by their unruliness and reckless behavior everything was ruined. On the one hand, they exacted from each people whatever tribute they imposed. Apart from the tribute, they rode about and carried off by force the possessions of each tribe. Then XIII and the Medes invited the greater number of them to a banquet, made them drunk, and killed them. Thus the Medes recovered their power and ruled over the same nations as before. They also took Nineveh, the manner of whose capture I shall set forth in another history, and made the Assyrians subject to them, except only the land of Babylon. After this XIII died, having reigned 40 years, including the years during which the Scythians had rule, and Astyages son of XIII received the kingdom from him. A daughter was born to Astyages, and he named her Mandane. In his sleep it seemed to him that so much water passed from her, that it filled his city and flooded the whole of Asia. He delivered the stream to the Magian interpreters of dreams, and when he heard from them the truth in each point, he became afraid. Afterward, when Mandane was of an age to have a husband, he did not give her in marriage to any of the Medes who were his peers, because he feared the vision. Instead he gave her to a Persian named Cambyses, whom he found to be of good descent and quiet disposition, but whom he counted in rank far below a Mede of middle station. When Mandane was married to Cambyses, in the first year Astyages saw another vision. It seemed to him that from this daughter's womb a vine grew, and that this vine spread over the whole of Asia. After seeing this vision, and giving it to the interpreters of dreams, he sent for his daughter, who was then pregnant, to come from the land of the Persians. When she came, he kept watch over her, desiring to destroy whatever should be born from her, for the Magian interpreters of dreams signified to him that the offspring of his daughter would be king in his place. Astyages, wishing to guard against this, called Harpagos when Cyrus was born. Harpagos was a man nearly related to him, trusted by him above all the other Medes, and made manager of all his affairs. Astyages said to him, "Do not neglect in any way, Harpagos, the matter I shall set upon you to do. Beware lest you set me aside and choose the advantage of others instead, bringing yourself afterward to destruction. Take the child whom Mandane bore, carry it to your house, and kill it, afterward bury it in whatever manner you yourself desire." Harpagos answered, "O king, never yet in any past time have you found any offense in me against you, and I also keep watch over myself for the time to come, so that I may commit no error toward you. If it is indeed your pleasure that this be done, then my service, at least, must be properly rendered." Harpagos answered in this way, and when the child had been delivered to him, adorned as if for death, he went weeping to his wife and told her all the words Astyages had spoken. She asked him what he now had in mind to do. Harpagos answered that he would not do as Astyages had commanded. Not even if Astyages became still more out of his senses and more mad than he was now, he said, would he agree to his will or serve him in such a murder. He would not kill the child for many reasons. First, because the child was kin to him, and second, because Astyages was old and had no male heir. If after Astyages died, the power came to his daughter, through whom Astyages was now killing this child by Harpagos' hand, would not the greatest danger then await Harpagos? For his own safety, the child had to die, but one of the servants of Astyages must be the killer, not one of his own. Having said this, Harpagos immediately sent a messenger to the one among the herdsmen of Astyages whom he knew to pasture his herds in the places most suitable for his purpose, on the mountains most haunted by wild beasts. This man's name was Mithridates, and he was married to a woman who was his fellow slave. The name of the woman he had married was Kino in the tongue of the Hellenes, and Spako in the Median tongue, for what the Hellenes call Kina, a bitch, the Medes call Spaka. This herdsman had his cattle, pastures on the skirts of the mountains, from Ecbatana toward the north wind and toward the Euxine Sea. In this direction, toward the Hesperians, the Median land is very mountainous, lofty, and thickly covered with forests, while the rest of Media is all level plain. When the herdsman came, summoned with great urgency, Harpagos spoke to him. Astyages commands you to take this child and place it on the most desolate part of the mountains, so that it may perish as quickly as possible. He told me to say that if you do not kill it, but preserve it from death in any way, he will kill you by the most evil kind of destruction. I have been appointed to see that the child is exposed. When the herdsman heard this, he took up the child, went back by the way he had come, and arrived at his dwelling. His wife, as it seems, had been every day on the point of giving birth, and by a providential chance she brought her child into the world at that very time, while the herdsman was away in the city. Both husband and wife had been anxious for each other, the man fearing about his wife's childbirth, and the woman wondering why Harpagos had sent for her husband so urgently, since he had not been accustomed to do so before. As soon as the herdsman returned and stood before her, she saw him again beyond her hopes, and was the first to speak, asking why Harpagos had sent for him so urgently. Wife, when I came to the city I saw and heard what I wish I had not seen, and what I would wish had never happened to those whom we serve. The house of Harpagos was full of mourning, and I was astonished and went inside. As soon as I entered, I saw laid out to view an infant child gasping for breath and screaming, adorned with gold ornaments and embroidered clothing. When Harpagos saw me, he ordered me at once to take up the child, carry it away, and lay it on the part of the mountains most haunted by wild beasts. He said that Astyages had laid this task upon me, and used many threats against me if I failed to do it. I took the child and carried it away, supposing it was the child of one of the servants of the house, for I never could have guessed where it really came from. But I marveled to see it adorned with gold and fine clothing, and I marveled also because mourning was openly being made for it in the house of Harpagos. Then straightway as we went on the road, I learned the whole matter from the servant who went with me out of the city and placed the baby in my hands, that it was truly the son of Mandane, daughter of Astyages, and of Cambyses, the son of Cyrus, and that Astyages had ordered it killed. And now here it is. As he said this, the herdsman uncovered the child and showed it to her. When she saw that the child was large and beautiful in form, she wept, clung to her husband's knees, and begged him by no means to expose it. He said that he could not do otherwise, because watchers would come back and forth, sent by Harpagos to see that this was done, and he would die a miserable death if he failed to do it. When she could not persuade her husband, his wife next told him what to do. Since she could not persuade him not to expose the child, then, if the child had to be seen exposed, he should do this. She too had borne a child, but had borne it dead. He should take the dead child and expose it, and they would rear the child of the daughter of Astyages as if it were their own. In this way, he would not be found doing wrong to those they served, and they would not have taken bad counsel for themselves, for the dead child would receive a royal burial, and the living one would not lose his life. To the herdsman, in the circumstances, his wife seemed to speak well, and he immediately did as she said. The child he had been carrying to put to death he gave to his wife, and his own child, which was dead, he took and placed in the chest in which he had been carrying the other. Having adorned it with all the adornment of the other child, he carried it to the most desolate part of the mountains and placed it there. On the third day after the child had been exposed, the herdsman went to the city, leaving one of his under-herdsmen to watch there. When he came to the house of Harpagos, he said that he was ready to show the dead body of the child. Harpagos sent the most trusted of his spearmen, and through them he saw and buried the herdsman's child. That child, then, had burial, but the child afterward called Cyrus had been received by the herdsman's wife, and she was bringing him up, no doubt giving him some other name, not Cyrus. When the boy was 10 years old, the following thing happened to him, and by it he became known. He was playing in the village where the ox stalls were, playing there in the road with other boys of his age. In their play, the boys chose as their king this boy who was called the son of the herdsman. He set some of them to build palaces, others to be spearmen of his guard. One of them, no doubt, he appointed to be the eye of the king, and to another he gave the office of bearing messages, assigning a separate task to each. One of the boys playing with the rest, the son of Artabares, a man of repute among the Medes, did not do what Cyrus appointed him to do. Therefore Cyrus ordered the other boys to seize him hand and foot. When they obeyed his command, he treated the boy very roughly and scourged him. As soon as the boy was released, he became much angrier because he thought he had been treated with indignity. He went down to the city and complained to his father about the treatment he had received from Cyrus, not calling him Cyrus, for this was not yet his name, but the son of the herdsman of Astyages. Artabanus, in the anger of the moment, went at once to Astyages, taking the boy with him, and declared that they had suffered treatment that was not fitting. He showed his son's shoulders and said that they had been outraged by the king's slave, the son of a herdsman. When Astyages had heard and seen this, he wished to punish the boy in order to avenge the honor of Artabanus, and sent for both the herdsman and his son. When both were present, Astyages looked at Cyrus and asked whether he had dared, being the son of so mean a father as this, to treat with such unseemly insult the son of the man who stood first in the king's favor. Cyrus answered that he had done this to him with justice. The boys of the village, he said, among whom this boy too was one, had in their place set him up as king over them, because he appeared to them most fitted for that place. The other boys did what he commanded, but this one disobeyed and paid no attention, until at last he received the punishment due. If for this Cyrus was worthy to suffer any evil, there he stood before Astyages. While the boy spoke in this way, Astyages began to recognize him. The lines of his face seemed to resemble his own, his answer seemed somewhat too free for his station, and the time of the exposure seemed to agree with the boy's age. Struck with amazement by these things, he was speechless for a while. At last, recovering himself with difficulty, he wished to dismiss Artabanus so that he might get the herdsman alone and examine him. He told Artabanus that he would arrange these matters so that he and his son would have no cause for complaint. Then he dismissed Artabanus, and at Astyages' command the servants led Cyrus inside. When the herdsman was left alone with the king, Astyages asked him where he had received the boy and who had delivered him. The herdsman said that the boy was his own son, and that the mother was still living with him as his wife. Astyages said that he was not well advised in wanting to be brought to extreme necessity, and as he said this, he made a sign to the spearmen of his guard to seize him. As the herdsman was being led away to torture, he then declared the story as it really was. Beginning from the beginning, he went through the whole matter, telling the truth about it, and finally ended with entreaties, asking Astyages to grant him pardon. When the herdsman had made known the truth, Astyages cared less about him, but he was very greatly displeased with Harpagos and ordered his spearmen to summon him. When Harpagos came, Astyages asked him by what death he had destroyed the child born from Astyages' daughter, whom Astyages had delivered to him. Harpagos, seeing that the herdsman was in the king's palace, did not turn to any false way of speech lest he be convicted and found out. He said that as soon as he received the child, he took counsel and considered how he might act according to the king's mind, and how, without offending against his command, he might avoid being guilty of murder against the king's daughter and against the king himself. He had therefore called this herdsman and delivered the child to him, first saying that Astyages was the one who ordered him to kill it, and in this at least Harpagos said he had not lied, for Astyages had so commanded. Harpagos delivered the child to the man, commanding him to place it on a desolate mountain, and to stay by it and watch until it died, threatening him with every kind of punishment if he failed to accomplish this. When the herdsman had done what was ordered and the child was dead, Harpagos sent the most trusted of his eunuchs, and through them he saw and buried the child. Thus, he said, the matter happened, and the child had the death he described. In this way Harpagos declared the truth. Astyages concealed the anger he held against him for what had happened. First he related the matter over again to Harpagos as he had been told it by the herdsman, and afterward, when he had repeated it, he ended by saying that the child was alive, and that what had happened was well. He said that he had been greatly troubled by what had been done to the child, and had thought it no light matter that he had been set at odds with his daughter. Therefore Harpagos should consider this a happy change of fortune. First, he should send his son to be with the boy who had newly come, and then, since Astyages intended to make a sacrifice of thanksgiving for the boy's preservation to the gods to whom that honor belonged, Harpagos himself should come and dine with him. When Harpagos heard this, he did reverence and thought it a great thing that his offense had turned out to his own advantage, and that he had also been invited to dinner under happy omens. So he went to his house. As soon as he entered, he sent out his son, for he had only one son, about 13 years old, and told him to go to the palace of Astyages and do whatever the king commanded. Harpagos himself, overjoyed, told his wife what had happened. But when the son of Harpagos arrived, Astyages cut his throat, divided him limb from limb, roasted some pieces of the flesh and boiled others, had them prepared for eating, and kept them ready. When the time for dinner came and the other guests were present, and Harpagos also, tables covered with sheep's flesh were placed before the other guests and before Astyages himself. But before Harpagos was placed the flesh of his own son, all except the head, hands, and feet, which were laid aside covered in a basket. When it seemed that Harpagos had eaten enough, Astyages asked him whether he had been pleased with the banquet. Harpagos said that he had been very greatly pleased. Then those who had been commanded to do this brought him the head of his son covered up, together with the hands and feet. Standing near him, they told Harpagos to uncover them and take whatever he desired. Harpagos obeyed and uncovered them, and saw the remains of his son. Seeing them, he was not overcome with amazement, but contained himself. Astyages asked whether he knew what animal's flesh he had been eating. Harpagos said that he knew, and that whatever the king might do was pleasing to him. After answering in this way, he took up the parts of the flesh that still remained and went to his house. After that, I suppose, he gathered all the parts together and buried them. This was the penalty Astyages laid upon Harpagos. Then he took thought about Cyrus, and summoned the same magians who had interpreted his dream in the way already described. When they came, Astyages asked how they had judged his vision. They spoke in the same way as before, saying that the child had to become king if he lived on, and had not died first. Astyages answered them, "The child is alive and not dead. While he was living in the country, the boys of the village appointed him king, and he completely performed all the things that real kings do. He exercised rule, appointed spearmen of the guard, doorkeepers, messengers, and all the rest. Now therefore, to what do these things seem to you to tend? If the child is still alive and became king without any arrangement, be confident about him, and have good courage, for he shall not rule a second time. Some even of our oracles have had only small results, and at least what belongs to dreams often comes in the end to a feeble fulfillment. I myself also, O Magians, am most inclined to believe that this is so. Since the boy was named king, the dream has had its fulfillment, and this boy is no longer a source of danger to me. Nevertheless, give me counsel, having carefully considered what is likely to be safest both for my house and for you. To us also, O king, it is of great consequence that your rule should stand firm. Otherwise it is transferred to strangers, coming round to this boy who is a Persian, and we, being Medes, are made slaves and become of no account in the eyes of the Persians, since we are of a different race. But while you, one of our own nation, are established as our king, we both share in rule and receive great honors from you. Thus we must by all means care for you and for your rule. If we now saw anything in this to cause fear, we would declare everything to you beforehand. And since the dream has had its outcome in a trifling way, we ourselves are of good cheer and urge you to be so likewise. As for this boy, send him away from before your eyes to the Persians and to his parents." When Astyages heard this, he rejoiced. He called Cyrus and told him that he had wronged him because of a vision in a dream that had not come to pass, but that Cyrus was still alive by his own destiny. Therefore Cyrus should go in peace to the land of the Persians, and Astyages would send men with him to conduct him there. When he arrived, he would find a father and mother, unlike VCTK the herdsman and his wife. After speaking in this way, Astyages sent Cyrus away. When Cyrus returned and came to the house of Cambyses, his parents received him, and after they learned who he was, they welcomed him greatly, for they had supposed without doubt that their son had perished immediately after birth. They asked how he had survived. Cyrus told them, saying that before this he had not known, but had been utterly mistaken. On the way, however, he had learned all his own fortunes. He had supposed without doubt that he was the son of the herdsman of Astyages, but after his journey from the city began, he had learned the whole story from those who conducted him. He said that he had been brought up by the herdsman's wife, and he kept praising her throughout his tale, so that Clio was the chief person in it. His parents took this name from him, and in order that their son might be thought by the Persians to have been preserved in a more supernatural way, they set on foot a report that Cyrus, when he was exposed, had been reared by a bitch. From this source that report has come. As Cyrus grew to manhood, being the most courageous and best loved of all those of his age, Harpagos sought to become his friend, and sent him gifts, because he desired to take vengeance on Astyages. Harpagos did not see how punishment could come upon Astyages from himself, a private man, but when he saw Cyrus growing up, he tried to make him an ally, finding a likeness between the fortunes of Cyrus and his own. Even before that time he had done something. Since Astyages was harsh toward the Medes, Harpagos communicated separately with the chief men of the Medes and persuaded them that they must make Cyrus their leader and cause Astyages to cease being king. When he had done this and everything was ready, Harpagos wished to make his design known to Cyrus, who lived among the Persians. Since the roads were watched, he could do this in no other way, and so he devised the following scheme. He prepared a hare, cut open its belly without pulling off any of the fur, and put inside it, just as it was, a piece of paper on which he had written what he thought good. Then he sewed up the hare's belly again, gave nets as if to a hunter to the one of his servants whom he trusted most, and sent him away to the land of the Persians. By word of mouth he instructed the servant to give the hare to Cyrus, and to tell him at the same time to open it with his own hands and let no one else be present when he did so. This was accomplished. Cyrus received the hare, cut it open, found the paper inside, took it out and read it. "Son of Cambyses, the gods keep watch over you, for otherwise you would never have come to such good fortune. Therefore take vengeance on Astyages, who is your murderer. So far as his will is concerned, you are dead, but by the care of the gods and of me you are still alive. I think you have long ago learned everything from first to last, both how matters happened concerning yourself, and what I have suffered from Astyages because I did not kill you but gave you to the herdsman. If therefore you will be guided by me, you shall be ruler of all the land over which Astyages now rules. Persuade the Persians to revolt, and march with any army against the Medes. Whether I am appointed leader of the army against you, or any other of the Medes who are held in repute, you have what you desire, for these men will be the first to attempt to destroy Astyages, revolting from him and coming over to your side. Consider then that here at least everything is ready. Do this, and do it with speed." When Cyrus heard this, he began to consider how he might most skillfully persuade the Persians to revolt. After considering, he found that the following way was most convenient, and so he did it. First he wrote on a paper what he wished to write, and then he called an assembly of the Persians. He unfolded the paper, read from it, and said that Astyages had appointed him commander of the Persians. He then commanded the Persians to come to him, each man with a reaping hook. Cyrus proclaimed this command. Now there are many tribes of the Persians, and Cyrus gathered together and persuaded to revolt from the Medes those on whom all the other Persians depend, the Pasargadae, the Marathians, and the Maspians. Of these the Pasargadae are the most noble, and among them is the clan of the Achaemenidae, from whom the Perseid kings are sprung. The other Persian tribes are these, the Penthalians, the Darusians, and the Germanians, all of them tillers of the soil, and the rest are nomad tribes, namely the Daoi, Mardians, Dropicans, and Sagartians. There was a certain region of the Persian land overgrown with thorns, extending some 18 or 20 furlongs in each direction. When all had come with what they had been commanded to bring, Cyrus ordered them to clear this region for cultivation within one day. When the Persians had completed the task set before them, he ordered them to come to him on the next day bathed and clean. Meanwhile Cyrus gathered in one place all the flocks of goats and sheep and the herds of cattle belonging to his father, slaughtered them, and prepared them to entertain the host of the Persians, together with wine and other provisions of the most agreeable kind. When the Persians came on the next day, he made them recline in a meadow and feasted them. After they had finished dinner, Cyrus asked whether the things they had had on the former day or the things they had now seemed preferable to them. They said that the difference between them was great, for the former day had held nothing for them but evil, and the present day nothing but good. Taking up this answer, Cyrus laid bare his whole design. He told the men of the Persians that this was how matters stood with them. If they would do as he said, they would have these good things and 10,000 others, with no servile labor, but if they would not do as he said, they would have innumerable labors like those of yesterday. Therefore they should do as he said, and make themselves free. He said that he seemed to himself to have been born by providential fortune to take these matters in hand, and he thought that they were not worse men than the Medes, either in other matters or in those having to do with war. Since this was so, they should revolt from Astyages at once. The Persians, having obtained a leader, willingly attempted to set themselves free, since they had long been indignant at being ruled by the Medes. When Astyages heard that Cyrus was acting in this way, he sent a messenger and summoned him. Cyrus told the messenger to report to Astyages that he would be with him sooner than Astyages himself desired. Hearing this, Astyages armed all the Medes, and blinded by divine providence, appointed Harpagos to be leader of the army, forgetting what he had done to him. Then, when the Medes had marched out and began to fight with the Persians, some of them continued the battle, namely those who had not been made partakers in the design, while others went over to the Persians, but the greater number were deliberately slack and fled. When the Median army had been shamefully scattered, Astyages heard of it and spoke in threat against Cyrus. But not even so shall Cyrus escape punishment. After saying this, Astyages first impaled the Magi and interpreters of dreams, who had persuaded him to let Cyrus go. Then he armed those of the Medes who had been left behind in the city, both youths and old men. He led them out and engaged the Persians in battle, but he was defeated. Astyages himself was taken alive, and he also lost the Medes whom he had led out. When Astyages was a prisoner, Harpagos came and stood near him, rejoiced over him, and insulted him. Among other things he said to grieve him, he especially asked how it pleased him to be a slave instead of a king, referring to the dinner at which Astyages had feasted him with the flesh of his own son. Astyages looked at him, and asked whether Harpagos claimed the work of Cyrus as his own deed. Harpagos said that since he had written the letter, the deed was justly his. Then Astyages declared him at once the most unskilful and the most unjust of men. The most unskilful because, when it had been in his power to become king, if indeed what had now been done was really brought about by him, he had given the chief power to another, and the most unjust because, on account of that dinner, he had reduced the Medes to slavery. For if he absolutely had to confer the kingdom on someone else, and not keep it himself, it would have been more just to give this good thing to one of the Medes rather than to one of the Persians. But now the Medes, who were guiltless in the matter, had become slaves instead of masters, and the Persians, who had formerly been slaves of the Medes, had now become their masters. Thus Astyages, after being king for 35 years, was made to cease being king. Because of his cruelty, the Medes bowed beneath the yoke of the Persians, after they had ruled Asia, above the river Halys, for 128 years, except for the period during which the Scythians held rule. Later, however, they repented of what they had done and revolted from Deioces. But after revolting they were subdued again, being conquered in battle. At this time, then, in the reign of Astyages, the Persians with Cyrus rose up against the Medes, and from that time onward they were rulers of Asia. As for Astyages, Cyrus did him no harm beyond this, but kept him with himself until he died. Thus Cyrus was born and brought up and became king, and after this he subdued Croesus, who, as I have said before, was the first to begin the quarrel. Having subdued him, Cyrus then became ruler of all Asia.
And we will stop there. With Astyages dethroned by the grandson he tried to murder, the Medes fallen under the Persians, and Cyrus master of a kingdom that will not stop growing. Next time, in Part 5, Herodotus surveys the strange and splendid customs of these Persians, and then turns west again to the Greek cities of the Asian coast, who are about to learn what Cyrus's victory means for them. Mind the footnotes, and beware the folly.